A very special good morning to Mr. Mandla. I hope you don't mind, Mr. Mandla. I'm calling you by your first name. And one of the reasons I think I can do that is because you are registered in our Faculty of Accounting and Informatics. And I'm so proud to say that Mr. Mandla is highly experienced and he is qualified, in my view, to tackle the training that we are requesting of you. So students, I'd like you to take full advantage of Mr. Mandla's expertise, his knowledge, his qualifications, and ask him questions wherever you feel the need that you want to learn Audit command language. Mr. Mandla, I'm not sure if you want them to ask you the questions during your presentation or at the end of your presentation. But you can.
I prefer that when they need to get something clarified, it's best that they just stop me there and there, so that we don't lose that understand, because the way I explain the concepts, each concept builds on another concept. So it's critical that they understand all of them as we go along.
Thank you, Mr. Mandla. That's a teacher at heart. Yes, that's what a teacher must do. As soon as you have an issue and a problem, you ask that out, right? And students, that's also in life as well. Don't let a problem fester and grow into a bigger problem. Sort it out then and there. One day you'll be married and you'll have a wife and you'll have kids and all that. Try and sort it out immediately, okay? That was a side issue. Mr. Nai is supposed to give me a clap as a joke, that was, right? So I don't want to take any more time. Mr. Mandla, it's over to you. With the next 3 days, we'll be looking forward to it. And Mr. Mandla, just please remind my students that they must write that examination and that certification and tell us about that as well, right? And tell us a little bit about your background and how you found yourself in data analytics and especially in ACL. Thank you, Mr. Mandla. I will stop talking now. It's over to you.
Great stuff. Thanks. I really appreciate, Doc, the opportunity there that you've given to me to share some of the knowledge that I've actually acquired in my career. Let me just quickly share my screen here and do indicate when you can see it on your side. Can you see my screen?
I think it's still coming through, Mr. Mandla.
Okay.
Any of my students, can you see the screen?
Yes, I
Mr.
can.
Mandla.
Great
Yes, you
stuff.
can.
Great stuff. That's great. So we'll be doing some a data analytics training focusing on ACL. And ACL is a audit command language. We will just get into detail to it a bit later. Like my name has been given to you, Mandla Lukubeni is my name. And I think in our initial, is it the same group, Doc, or is it a new group, this one? But I had done an encounter with some of the auditing students a week or two ago. And I did give my background there, but it's fine. It's no issue. I can say that again. So
there may be a few new students, Mr. Mandla. I wouldn't mind if you repeat your introduction to the students.
Okay, great stuff. So just a brief background. I started off my career in a couple of years ago. I started off as a typical IT specialist. I was specializing in desktop support, network support, just your typical IT technical person. And my career actually took a turn, I think when I was like 6 years in, and I got introduced into data analytics for ACL across Africa. So I then started providing consulting services to companies across Africa, multidisciplinary companies like your finance sector, mining sector, retailer, higher education and stuff like that, where we were building analytics for them to support the internal audit function. And I then later on left the consulting space and I joined one of the leading insurance providers. I worked for them there as a ACL data analyst in the internal audit space, and I worked for them for some time. Then I joined DUT as an analyst programmer 2 years ago. This is my 3rd year at DUT, but my focus also changed, I think, on the 6 month or so when I started here, and I then focused on IT governance and risk and compliance, which is where I work with auditors, external auditors, internal auditors from the companies that we've actually outsourced to do the internal audit function for us. So that's where my space is, and I think I will be using some of the industry examples just to put context into explaining some of the concepts in the session. And do stop me whenever you've got a question, and so that we can address that as we go along. Just before maybe we start off, has anyone worked with ACL before? Have you seen ACL before the actual installation that I asked you a week ago? Have you worked with ACL before? Have you seen it? And just to get a sense of how have you been exposed to the tool? Yeah, just 2 or 3 individuals. Ayanda, I see your mic there.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes. I've seen it before because we currently procured it in our organization, and I've done 2 trainings, which was basic for internal auditing, data analytics, and then the second one was the advanced scripting, of which I completed, I think, 2 weeks back. Okay. So I've got that understanding, even though I haven't delved into it, but yeah,
okay,
that's my background.
Great stuff. Thanks, Ayanda there. And do we have anyone else who's had an encounter with ACL before? Anyone else? Okay, that should be fine. So don't even though you've not seen ACL before, don't what's the term? Now it's running away. Don't worry. I'm sure you've worked with Excel before, and basically ACL is Excel with just additional capability. So it's not going to be a major learning curve for you, even though you've not seen the tool before. I'm sure you'll actually learn nicely there with us. So don't worry there. So just to give you an outline of what we will actually tackle in here. So let me say this. You probably have seen in the industry a rise of the data analytics skills requirement. And a lot of companies are actually trying to find individuals with that particular specialization, which is analytics. And in the audit space as well, from experience, I've picked up how actually chief audit executive try to get resources outside in the industry. Normally want someone who's got some experience or some exposure analytics space, because organizations run their processes on top of systems, and those systems generate data. And to provide assurance that systems are working as intended, you do have to interrogate the data. So that analytics skill is a requirement in nowadays. So do take it further and write ACL analytics exam. So I will give you access or actually I've given you access to Launchpad already, where I added you, and I will just show you how to actually access some of the resources there so that we can eventually take the ACL Certified Data Analyst exam, which I'm sincerely motivating you guys to take that exam. So these are some of the concepts that we'll cover. 3 days is quite short, but we will try and cover what we can. So today will be more of a theory, and tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, we will do some examples where we actually practicalize the system we together. In my class, so when I ask a question, just be on alert. I do not ask a question in wildcard in like I specify who I'm asking the question to, and I volunteer my students so that you are all engaged. So do be on alert there. I'll just call your name to just ask what you think about any particular concept. So I volunteer you. So we'll look at basics of analytics. We'll look at some of the data concepts. We'll look at the phases of data. We'll look at some expressions to create some computed fields and stuff like that. And we will do some data imports, look at different, look at how we are before we actually analyze it deeper into the actual reporting, and we'll talk about some of the basic scripting capabilities there. Great stuff. So ACL, like I mentioned, is basically an audit command language. This tool was actually developed specifically for auditors, but gain traction, and everyone that's got a data analytic capability does leverage of ACL because it does provide that type of capability for every user there. And this is not a database, it's an analytic tool. So the difference being, you are not creating a data storage when you are using ACL. You are just manipulating and analyzing data sitting in whatever data storage. Some of the users in the industry that leverage of ACL, it's your auditors, obviously, like the name audit command language. This is utilized by both internal and external auditors. By the way, Auditor General uses ACL to do some of the analytics for the public sector. So you do need to get comfort there. Fraud examiners for forensic, they do leverage of ACL when they analytics there. Some departments, operational departments, you're probably familiar with the Institute of Internal Auditors, and they've got lines of defense. So you're not only looking at the third line of defense, which is the internal auditors. Even first and second lines of defense do leverage of ACL to do their analytics there. All sizes, you're talking about Fortune 100, Fortune 500, Global 500, they in terms of their analytics. The federal and state, especially in the US, by the way, ACL is developed in Canada, so they've got a huge footprint overseas there, and a tool that can actually be for a lot of analytics requirements. And so these are some of the key benefits that this tool can provide. ACL will provide you with ease of use. It's quite intuitive. It's easy to use because when you look at the interface, it's intuitive. There's no like heavy learning curve for you. And one of the key requirements for internal auditors, when you look at the internal audit charter, is that they have to provide independent assurance. And how would you provide independence assurance? You need to make sure that the data that you work with retains its integrity, right? It's not changed in any. It's not changed in the process when you're doing your analysis. So having a tool that is read-only to maintain that integrity is quite critical for internal auditors. And because of the vast number of systems that are in the industry, ACL does read mainframe, which is one of the legacy systems using one of the legacy encodings. So ACL reads that data in its native language. So that's one of the benefits there. And it's fast in terms of processing. That I must make a disclaimer though, that it does leverage off your system capability. So a laptop, if you have a very slow laptop, obviously that will translate to the application as well. So if you've got a super user, it means your analysis will be quite fast. These are some of the ACL benefits. What uses of ACL, right? So you would use sort of the typo there. So basically, you just validate the effectiveness of internal control. That is one of the major requirement for an internal auditor, to provide assurance. So how do you provide assurance? You make sure that the internal controls work effectively, right? And they work as intended. You look at things like regulatory compliance to make sure that there is or even government regulatory requirements. So you'd use ACL to do some of those things. And because it's running on a technology that extracts data from any data source that is a relational database management system, so it's enterprise-wide, and it provides those powerful analytics there for you. And because we are in the fourth industrial revolution, we don't want to do things in an ad hoc basis. We don't want to do things manually. We do want to have a certain level of automation. And ACL does provide you with that capability to continuously monitor your environment. Right. So let's just without knowing how the data is structured, right? Now let's just quickly talk about the concept of data, and we'll talk about how data is stored in terms of the file itself, and we'll talk about some of the data attributes within the file. We'll talk about things like your files, your fields, and stuff like that. And I'm trying to move pretty fast, and I'm happy that this is recorded so I can go and replay it. But if there's a concept that you need me to clarify, please stop me. And so these are some. I've got here on the screen a data storage. So data is stored in files, right? So basically, a file is your Excel document Excel spreadsheet sitting somewhere in your My Document. That is basically a collection of all of these records, right, that you may have stored in your repository. It could be sitting in a database somewhere, a table, with your, say for example, your employee master file, a file that has got all of your employees for the organization that you work with. That is a file. So if you look at this screen, you will see, let me just quickly point here. So this is a file. Can you see? So this is a file there because it's got all of the records, it's got all of the fields. And a file is made up of records as well. In Excel, they normally term those as rows. So these would be your records. Now we're trying to build a file because there's no point for us to do analysis on whilst we don't know how a file is structured, right? So another building block of a file is the records, which means the rows, right? These are the rows where you've got all of the different type of information for an employee. You've got an employee number or invoice number, you've got an invoice date and invoice amount for each and every one of the invoices there. Then we've got fields, which we normally call them as columns in Excel. These have us
Hello, Mr. Mandla. I think we lost you. Students, can you hear Mr. Mandla?
No, sir, you cannot.
Let's just wait a second or two. Okay, so while waiting for Mr. Mandla, I think you are aware of the concepts of a field, a record, a field, a byte, and that also would have covered in your MATLAB certification that you would have done, how you store data and the elements of a field is made up of a byte is made up of bits. So 8 bits make a byte, and the fields make up a record, records make up files, and if you put lots of files together, you're going to make up a database. I can see Mr. Mandla moving his
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Hello, thank you, Mr. Mandla. We lost you for a few minutes there, but we can hear you now.
Okay, just give me another second. I just need to make use of another access point for me.
Sure. Okay, so while Mr. Mandla is looking for another access point, if you look at the columns that he has, it's a field name, a data type, start, decimals, and date format. So the first field name is vendor number, and you notice that the data type is character. So even though it says vendor, the data type would store characters. So now I can have a vendor like vendor ABC 123, and they tell me that the length is 5. So I need to say ABC 23, right? So that'll be a vendor. And the invoice number is also Mr. Mandla.
Yes, I think is it any better now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead, Mr. Mandla.
Great stuff. So you will see what I've got on the screen here is how we break down a file, right? And basically a file is a named collection of all stored processes and individual entities. Like you've got your records, you've got your fields, you've got your bytes. And I did explain the records there, which is the lines, the rows as they term them in Excel. And I've got the fields, which also are termed as columns in Excel. And if you look at the bytes, which I think that's what maybe I need to spend as more time on, and I believe you may have had an exposure. So a byte is literally a character, right? So A is basically a byte, right? And a byte is made up of bits. And you know, a computer reads information in zeros and ones, right? I think there's about 8 bits per character, right? So 8 bits per byte. Are we together there? So it's important that we understand those details there. And when you look at this information here, at the bottom part, you've got what is called a layout, a record layout. What this piece of information does, it just gives you information to be able to interpret this table that's on here, because you see you don't have any field names there, and you don't know what's the length of each field name, and you'll calculate the length based on bytes, which is characters. Say for example, I am trying to interpret this one. I will see if you look at position 1. If you look at position 1, which is the very first byte, starting with the 1 there, with a length of 5. So if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you would know that that is actually field vendor number. And each and every field has got to have a data type. And you've got about 4 data types in ACL. We'll talk about those. But on a very high level, you've got a character, which is alphanumeric ABCs, D unto Z, and 0 to 9, and all the printable special characters, hashes, minus, times, slash, and stuff like that. So those are alphanumerics and printable characters, right? And you've got also date time, which is a date stamp, right? And this is how it would look. So you've got the date aspect, which is the day. You've got the month aspect, which is the the month, and you've got the year aspect, right? We'll talk about those in detail. And you've got numerics, and numerics are your numeric numbers, your numbers where you can actually do some calculation, like in here. So defining this, making sense of this table that doesn't seem to have any fields at the top, you would use what is called a record layout to interpret that table there, right? Now, just to check if you did actually get what I was trying to say there, quickly, looking at that table, I'll give you 5 seconds to just look at the table, right? It's the same one that I used before, right? How many fields are there? How many fields are there in the screen in that table? You want to try it, Kiza? Can you hear me there? Anyone wants to volunteer? I don't know if Mkiza has got audio problems there. Okay, want to give it a try, Ayanda?
Isn't it 7?
How did you arrive at that conclusion? Are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah, you're still analyzing how you arrived.
Yes.
Yeah. Remember, for a record is basically the rows, right, that are stored within the file, right? Looking at this file, you've got how many rows? 7, which is correct, right? But you do need to follow some sort of framework to arrive at any given decision. We don't want to guess there. And how many I started with records. How many fields now? Give it a try. Fields basically are columns within a file where a particular piece of information is stored. How many fields do we have? Are you there? Maybe we've got, you can also type on the chat, because I do want to make this session as interactive as possible. Okay, I'm gonna give someone else a long one. Hadeb, I can see Hadeb.
Is there 6 fields there? Six, I think.
There are 6. Great stuff. So now you can interpret the records. You can also interpret the fields. And remember the concepts of bytes, right? And we said bytes are basically characters, right? So each character is made out of 8 bits. And when you look at the invoice number field, right? The invoice number field, according to the record layout, is the second field, right? And it's supposed to start at position 6 at character number 6 of that table, and it's supposed to have a length of 15. With that piece of information, if you look at record 5 and field invoice number, how many trailing blank spaces? Trailing blank spaces are spaces at the end of the data, this part. So at record 5, looking at this field, how many trailing spaces are there? Who wants to give it a try? Ne, you want to try it? I think it's on hold there. Kosi, do you want to give it a try? Okay, that's fine. Now, so let's do, I see someone wants to. Yes, Khadem.
Are there 2 trading blank spaces?
There are 3. Okay, let's quickly try and do some math there. So we are saying invoice number starts at position 6, right? And has a length of 15, right? So it's got 15 characters and starting at position 6. But when you look at invoice number on record number 5, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? There's about 6 characters in there. And for a field that's got a length of 15 and you only have about 6 there, how many spaces? There's about 9.
7, 9.
It's about 9. It's 9. Because remember, this is supposed to be 15, right? And we only used the first 6 in that storage. How many bits are left? How many bytes are left? There's about 9 bytes left to get to 15. Does it make sense?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So this is the byte storage. We only used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And we are remaining with about 9 bytes storage. So that's what it means by those trailing blank spaces. Let's look at the last one there, the invoice amount, and we are told the invoice amount is starting from location 31, which is somewhere here, right? And you're looking at record number 2, which is this one, and they are asking us there how many leading spaces. And we know that this field has a 12-byte storage, right? A length of 12, right? And when we look at this one, how many byte storage did we use there on this one? Also count the dots. Those are characters as well. Those are bytes. How many did we use? Kumal? I didn't get that one. We've used about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out of 12, we've used 7. So how many are remaining there to tell us how many are those leading spaces? If we've used 7, out of 12, we are remaining with 5. Does the concept come home? Is it better? Do you understand the concept there of how data is stored? Data is stored in a file, and the file is made up of record fields and bytes, right? And you will use what is called a record layout to understand what the fields and the records mean in a table. Now let's go into the data types. I did mention that we've got about 4 data types in ACL, and these 4 data types are namely character, date time, and you also have numeric, you also have a logical, right? So basically, a character, this is how you identify a character data type. It's alphanumeric, and it also includes symbols. Alphanumeric means A until Z and numbers. And it also includes printable characters or printable symbols like your hashes and those special symbols there. And this is how you would tell that a field is a character. It's if a field cannot, you cannot perform a calculation on. I'll make an example. You're looking at your ID number, right? Even though that ID number is made up of numbers, but we cannot multiply Khadebe's ID number with Ayanda's ID number. So we cannot perform a calculation in there. So that would remain a character. Looking at things like a cell number, even though it's made up of numbers, but because we cannot perform a calculation on it, it will be a character data type, right? Look at things like invoice numbers, etc., right? Then a numeric, it's basically an inverse of a character. You have to perform some type of calculation from it. So it must be zeros, 0 until 0 through 9, right? And it also, if you're looking at a numeric data type, we can also have some minuses there because of your sign, like minus for crediting and plus for crediting and minus for debiting, right? So in a numeric field, you have numerics, and you've got to be able to do some calculation there. We talk about formatting as well. So when you're working with a character, you must always format a character in double quotes when you are using ACL, right? You must put it inside double quotes. A numeric, you don't have to format it. You will put it without any formatting. Now, when you look at a date time data type, date time is where you store dates, right? So it must be a valid date. Say, for example, you know there is no 32nd of any month, right? So data that's got that type of amount date, it means it's not really a date data type, because there's no 32nd day in a month. So it must be a valid date, right? From 1 to 31 on some of the months, right? That is your date time data type, which always has to be formatted within single back quotes. You see in your keyboard, there is that tab button, depending on which keyboard you are using. And just above that, there is that small quotation mark that is pointing backwards. Can you see it? Just before the 1. That is the formatting you would use in ACL when you are formatting a date time, right? Another data type is logical. So this is storing a Boolean type of data. It's a true or a false, right? Are you a male? Yes or no, true or false. Are you older than 10? True or false. That type of data is stored in a Boolean data type. Are we together? I'm just going to pause there for a second and just check if we are going, we are moving together there. Are you happy, Shongwan?
Yeah.
Great stuff. Now let's quickly, because of I think you're almost done with this session today, let's quickly look at this activity here. Now that we've understood the concept of data type, maybe before we do that, can you see that string that I've got here? Can you see this string? Yeah. If you look at that string, now considering the understanding of the different data types, what would you think that number represents? Kumal, what would that number represent considering the understanding of the different data types? Okay, so if you look at this number, if it were a character, right, it could have been something like an invoice number, which means you cannot perform a calculation on, and it would be a character, and it will retain the leading 0 because it's a character, it's a printable character, right? It's not really a number, right? And if you were to look at it as a numeric data type, it would give you a value of something like this, because in numerics, even when you look into your Excel, if you are dealing with a numeric, there's no point of retaining a leading 0 there. It doesn't mean anything unless it's a fraction, unless it's 0 point, then you can retain a leading 0. But if it's just a number, a whole number and it starts with a 0, you'll drop that 0, right? And also, you would have to consider things like decimals, right? If this number, same string, could be having 2 decimals, right, it will be a different value. Can you see? It's instead of it being 9,083,012 had it been a whole number, but now if it's a number with 2 decimals, it's no longer 9 million. Can you see now? It's 90,820 12 cents, right? Because you are now factoring decimal on the same piece of data. It's important how to interpret it depending on the data type. Also, if it were a date, and you'll consider how that date is formatted in the source system. Some systems format it in the North American interpretation, where the first 2 parts are actually representing the month, and the second 2 parts represent the dates, and the last parts represent the year portion. But if it were a European, you would see that the first 2 parts is actually the day, right? The second 2 parts is actually the month, and the last 4 parts is actually a year. So depending on how that data is interpreted in the source system, in the source data, in your ERP system, like your SAP, like your Oracle, like your SQL, whatever system you are working with, do make sure that when you are interpreting a date, make sure you are interpreting it the same way it's defined in the source data. When you are interpreting a numeric field, make sure you consider the decimals as stipulated in the source data, because there are implications there. A number can actually change its value depending on the decimal, even though you are looking at the same piece of string. With that information, let's quickly look at this, right? You've got a social security number that is 487231986 and 0431578834, and these are defined as numeric. What would be the implication there? What would be the implication, Ayanda, if you were to store those in a field that's numeric, both of those values?
I think it won't allow.
Why? Why would it not allow it?
If that field is strictly for social security, it will restrict you, or it will give you an error to show that whatever that you are inputting is not allowed in that.
Yeah. Great stuff. That is when you're looking at just taking you in to some of the database concepts. There is what is called a constraint, database constraint, where when you are looking at a field, you say, I can only allow this type of information in this field. I can only allow numbers here. I can only allow alphabets here. We call those database constraints. Now, if you define a field in ACL also as numeric, you are basically saying it will only make sense of data that's between 0 and 9. It must be numbers, right? Once it sees things like this in the middle of the field, which are characters, and this is supposed to be a numeric, it will not allow this one. It will probably have it saved, but it will not interpret it as a numeric. It will just say it's an error. But this one, it will interpret it as numeric, but remember it's got a leading 0, and it will drop it. It will just be a number 431578834. Are we together? If it were to be defined as numeric. Now the second one, if you've got these 2 dates, right, what would be the implication if you were to define them using the European format? Remember, the European format says the first part is the day, the second part is the month, right? The first part is the day, the second part is the month. What would be the implication if we were to define these 2 dates in a date as date times in a European format? Ade?
Was that
Yes.
it would be an error, sir.
On which one? On the first one or the second one? It would be an error on the second one. The first one, this is a valid date based on the European format, because we said the European format takes the first part of the string as the day and the second part as the month. So there is there is the 7th day, and there is also a 6th month. But this one, it wouldn't take it because there's no 23rd month. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Right. So it will take the first one, it won't take the second one. What would be the implication of storing this one as a character? 3565,27. Is Nebek? I think do you want to try that one?
I think you will return error, sir.
Remember, we said when we were explaining the data types and the characters, we said a character is any printable character. It could be alphanumeric or a symbol. So it will still accept it because comma is a printable character. So it will accept it as is. However, you cannot perform any calculation on that piece of information. Are we together?
Yes, sir.
Great stuff. Now, let's quickly, I think we've got about 8 minutes. I'm just going to give you some work to do this evening. And probably some of you may have seen this, but it's important that you also go through it also. Let's just quickly go to, just open your browser on your machine. I'm just going to stop the presentation there. Open the browser, Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, whichever browser you like using. I prefer Google Chrome. Could you open your browser in your machine?
Yes.
Let me just quickly share this one. So just follow me there. Open your browser, right? And search for highbond.com, right? highbond.com. Are we together?
Yes.
Yeah. Search for highbond.com, and it will take you to this window, right? Then put your email address. I'm sure you've already activated your accounts there. Put your email address there and your password, and click on sign in. Put your email address, the email address that you had received the invitation on, and put the password that you had defined when you were creating your profile there. Why is it not taking mine? Are we together? Great stuff. Then it will take you to this landing page. Tell me if you are having any trouble there. It will take you to this landing page, and there you'd have Durban University of Technology, and then on your right here you'll have all these resources, right? Then you click on Academy. It will open another window for you. Click on Academy, and it will open another window for you. Right. Are we together? Then,
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Great stuff. In there, click on Get Your First Course. Are we together? Then it will open this for you, right? And these are the courses that are available for you that you have to enroll on and finish off. But for this semester, we'll just do 3 of them. I'll tell you which one you'll do next after today. But this one is the one that I need you to do this evening. The one that says Basics of Analytics. You click on that one, and it should just take about 1 hour, 1 hour, 30 minutes for you to finish. So do spend some time this evening and access this course and get this course on your left. Then it will change that to say start or resume. You click on start. Then you follow the instructions there. It will start off with a survey. Just do the survey. Then it will go to the content of that course. It should take you about 90 minutes to finish it. Are we together?
Yes.
Great stuff. So that's what you need to do for me this evening. When we meet tomorrow, we'll just do a quick revision on this, and then we'll take another concept tomorrow. Doc, over to you there.
Mr. Mandla, thank you very much. I really like and appreciate what you've done so far, and you've given the students homework. You were interactive in the class. You asked them for questions, and I can see that some of them were paying attention. I don't know why the others were not. I think they have some connectivity issues, but I know every single one of them was giving you their full attention. Mr. Mandla, just one question. You mentioned that you did an undergraduate study, an undergraduate qualification. Where did you study, Mr. Mandla?
I did my studies at Walter Sisulu in Eastern Cape. So I'm an Eastern Cape boy. Okay.
Okay. That's why the accent. Okay. So what was that, a diploma, Mr. Mandla?
Say that again.
That was a diploma.
I did a diploma and a BTech also.
Oh, and a BTech as well. And
Yeah.
and are you studying now, Mr. Mandla?
I'm doing my. I'll be enrolling in my masters this year.
Wow, I'm so happy. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Mandla, if you can do it, I'm sure my students can also do it. Don't you think so, Mr. Mandla?
Yes, exactly. They can do it, and you just need to be committed and then just make time. You'll definitely survive and do it as well. There's no excuse. You just need to be committed and make time. You will actually achieve these things.
Excellent. I'm so happy, Mr. Mandla. Now, Mr. Mandla, what I'm going to do is, you know those questions you asked about a field and a record and a data type? I'm going to turn those into multiple choice questions and true and false questions, and I'm going to give them a quiz. And that's going to happen anytime from now till the end of the week, right? So that I'm keeping them on their toes.